Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. J.B. Dias. I'm the Vice President for Education and Curriculum Development here at the Herbie Hancock Institute of Jazz. And I'm coming to you today from my office, from my studio, here at the Herbie Hancock Institute of Jazz Performance at UCLA in Los Angeles. And today we're going to talk about how to convert your rock guitarists in your jazz band, your jazz combo, into jazz guitarists. And the first way to do that is to get them comping, meaning playing chords. The word comp comes from the word complement and accompany, meaning play chords, hip chords, jazz chords in a interesting fashion, rhythmically interesting fashion, while they're accompanying and complementing the soloists. Most of your guitarists, and I've seen this many times because, I taught at the Jamie Aebersold Summer Jazz Camp for 3 decades. And I would see, some marvelous teachers in these combos directing these bands, and the difference between how they played at the beginning of the week to the end of the week was remarkable, except for the guitar players. And that's because even though they knew a lot about piano, I'm talking about the teachers and their horn that they played and so forth, they really didn't know a lot about guitar. And that seems to be one of the mysteries for a lot of band directors. What do I do with a guitar player besides just telling him or her to turn down the amp? So we're going to talk about playing jazz guitar voicings. For instance, if you were to play the first 2 bars of a song from my father, and you put the F minor and the E flat 7 in front of them, your guitarist might sound something like this. F minor, 1, 2, 3, 4. E flat 7th. D flat 7th. But after today's session, they are going to sound like this. F minor, F minor, E flat 7, D flat 7, G minor, F minor. That's the point. Now, even if you don't know anything about guitar, by the end of this session, you're going to know how to teach your guitar students how to do that. And the better they get, the more guitar voicings they learn, the more they're going to get into it, and the more they start to practice on their own without you having to harp on them to practice. First of all, get your guitar players to raise the guitar strap. Get it up here. Get it up here. So many guitar players, kids, they have it down, to their waist or even down to their knees. To play with good technique, you have to have it high. I always say, if your chin can't touch it, it's not high enough. The higher the guitar, the hipper the guitarist. And also, if they're sitting down like I am, you'd want to have it in the same place when they're sitting down as when they're standing up. And that way, the guitar strap needs to be shorter so it's up to where it is when they're sitting down. That's number 1. Number 2, so many guitar players don't know the notes through the neck. Sometimes they don't even know the notes that well in first position. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is insist that your students learn the notes on the guitar. And I'm going to show you on the screen what those notes are. And by the way, everything you see on this screen you're going to be able to download as a PDF file afterwards. So you don't have to take any notes. You can just listen and download this in a minute. Now, the strings, the lowest string is the E string. We call that the 6th string. A is the 5th, D is the 4th, G is the 3rd, B is the 2nd, and E, again, is the 1st string. And when I say 1st string, I'm talking about the highest note. And when I'm talking about the 6th string, I'm talking about the lowest string. lowest in pitch. Lowest in pitch and highest in pitch is the high E string. Notice that the guitar just goes up in half steps. So we have E, F, F sharp, and I'm just going up in half steps. G, G sharp or A flat, A sharp or B flat, B, C, C sharp or D flat, D, D sharp or E flat, E. And when I get to that double dot here, when I get to the double dot, there's two dots there, that's the octave. Now, that's a lot of notes to memorize, and it's so many more than what's on piano, because on a piano it just absolutely repeats every 12 notes, and on the saxophone you only have a few places to finger each note. But here you can finger a G here, and 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 so forth. And that's one reason why guitar players have such a difficult time reading, because depending on where they are on the guitar, they're going to play any note with any finger at any given time, as opposed to the same note with the same finger, same fingering like you do on a saxophone. So the most important notes to get them to comp chords, the two most important strings, I should say, are the E string and the A string, because that's where the roots of those chords are going to be. And mind you, they're usually not going to play the roots of the chord. The roots of the chord are for the bass player to play. They're going to play the upper notes of the chord, but they have to know where that root is visually, so they play the right fret, because all chords are movable. Meaning, if I played a C7th chord here, and I move it up a fret, it's a C sharp 7th. I move it up another fret, it's a D 7th, E flat 7, E7, F7, and so forth. And I'm going to show you on the screen in a minute, so you can watch me play that. But just so that you know, all chords are movable. Now, they have to memorize the open strings: E, A, D, G, B, and E. Then every half step above that is one fret. And what I suggest you do is you have your students memorize 4 frets a day. 4 frets a day. Now, I've had students that have played 2 or 3 years and they've never memorized the notes. But they can certainly memorize the first in 4 days: F, F sharp, G, and G sharp. So you would just have them play E, F, F sharp, G, and G sharp, just like that, first 4 frets, and then mix them up. E, F, F sharp, F, G, G sharp, G. Just those 4 notes. Just say memorize those, mix them up, quiz yourself. G, F, G sharp, F sharp, same as G flat, G sharp, same as A flat, E, just mixing them up, those 4 frets, and of course your student can memorize 4 frets in one day. The next day, have them do the next 4 frets: A sharp, B, and C. But make sure they review these first, the first 4. So the next day, those 4, and they mix those up. On the 3rd day, they review all those, and they do the next 4. And mix them up, quiz them, point to the notes, say, what is that? Or just say, tell me the notes as you play. A, G, B, F, G sharp. Mixing it up just like that. So that takes 3 days. And then the next 3 days, 4 frets a day, have them do the next string, and then the next string, and the next string, and the next string, and the next string, until they have them all memorized. Make sure they always review. But as soon as they have those first 2 strings memorized, and what I mean by the first 2, I'm talking about the 6th string, that's the lowest string, and the A string memorized, then you can start talking about chord voicings, because they have to know where, at what fret, what root to line the chords up with. You can explain the concept. Now, they don't need to understand all this right away, But you want to understand the concept that all jazz guitar chords, and jazz piano chords for that matter, are made up of notes from the related scale. Every jazz chord has got a related scale. In other words, a scale that goes with it to have the same vibe. For instance, we'll just start with C major. A C major chord, that's C major 7, just 1, 3, 5, and 7 of a C major scale. That we call the vertical representation of the sound, because if you write it on a staff, it's all vertical. And the horizontal representation of that same sound is, so if you play them together, they have the same exact vibe. So a C major chord can have any note in the scale put into the chord, except there are certain chords that have avoid tones. And what do you do with an avoid tone? You avoid them. The good news, there's only 3. Avoid the 4th in a C major chord. Avoid the 4th in a C dominant 7th chord, unless it's a sus chord where the 4th is being substituted for the 3rd. That's explained down here. You don't have to worry about it right now. You can read this later. And then also the flat 2 on a half diminished chord. Now, just keep that in the back of your mind for now. So, if I'm playing a C major chord, I can put in my chord a 1, a 2, a 3, avoid the 4, 5, 6, 7, and root. So a piano player might play that chord like this. And what I'm playing is a 3, 6, 9, 5, and root. Or a piano player, he or she might play this voicing, 7, 3, 6, 9, 5. Why can I put in the 6 and the 9 in just a regular C major chord if it just says C major? The answer is because it's in the related scale. And I always say this to my students: why can you put in this note or that note? And I say, before you give me the answer, I'm going to give you the answer, and this is the answer to the question every time I ask you, and the answer is, because it's in the related scale. So why can I put the 2nd of a C major scale in a C major chord? Because it's in the related scale, C major. Why can I put a 6th then? Because it's in the related scale. Notice they're numbered: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1 again. Dominant 7th chord. Well, on a dominant 7th chord, you just lower the 7th to a flat 7. So the scale, you lower the 7 to a flat 7. So you can put any note from the Mixolydian scale into the dominant chord, again except the F. Now minor has a flat 3rd and a flat 7. There's C, E flat, G, and B flat. And there's no avoid tones. This one, I can put a 1, a 2, a 3. The 4 sounds great in this chord. 5, 6, flat 7, and root. C half diminished is the same as C minor 7 flat 5. C minor 7 flat 5. In my day, we called it a C minor 7 flat 5. Now everybody calls it a C half diminished. I like the name C minor 7 flat 5 because it's a C minor 7th, but with a flat 5. So C, E flat, G flat, and B flat. And again, you can use any notes from the Locrian scale, but that avoid tone. And notice that the formula is just that the notes from a major scale a half step higher. So if I play a D flat major scale, and I started on C, playing those same notes, that's C Locrian. I'm going to just do one more, and then you understand the concept. And that is C7 altered down here. C7 altered. Now, C7 altered, all altered means it's short for altered 5th and altered 9th. And when you alter a 5th or a 9th, that means you sharp it or you flat it. So C7 altered is short for C7, sharp 5, flat 5, sharp 9, flat 9. So the scale that you use is Superlocrian, and all that is a half step higher melodic minor scale. So what's a half step higher than C? D flat. Well, here's D flat major. D flat melodic minor, all you have to do, how do you make any scale a melodic minor scale? Any major scale a melodic minor? You just flat the third. So here's D flat major. Here's D flat melodic minor. And if I play that chord from C to C, that scale from C to C, I have the chord that goes with a C7 altered. And what I'm playing here is 1, 3, sharp 5, flat 7, sharp 9. And if I were to just play a jazz voicing of that chord, I might play this. And I'm playing 3, flat 7, sharp 9, sharp 5, flat 9. Now, this is all just to go in the back of your head. The main thing that you want to understand is that every chord symbol is related to a scale from which you can put notes into the chord to make it sound more like jazz. Notice on this C7 Superlocrian, I have the root, the flat 9, the sharp 9, because E flat's the same as D sharp. See, the regular 9 or 2 and 9 are the same. F flat is the third, because F flat is E. We all know E is the third of a C scale. And then G flat's the flat 5, and A flat's the sharp 5, because A flat's the same as G sharp, flat 7, and root. So they can begin to learn these scales little by little. I say learn one scale a day. Learn C major today, learn F major tomorrow, B flat major the next day. So all 12 major scales, that would take 12 days. The next 12 days, flat the 7 of each of those. And they're saying, well, this is easy. And by the way, there's 12 keys, there's 10 scales. So in 120 days, just by doing one scale a day, that's what, 4, 8, 3, 6, 9, 12, 30, 60, 90, 120 days, that's 4 months. In 4 months, they can play all their jazz scales just by learning one a day. And by the way, if they can learn C major in one day, how long do you think it would take them to learn C dominant, C mixolydian? All they have to do is flat the 7, change one note. And then if they can do that, then all they have to do is flat the third to go with a minor chord. All that being said, I want to talk about jazz guitar voicings, how to use this concept. And again, they don't have to know everything. They just have to know a concept at this point that you put in the notes from the related scale into the chord. Now, they're not going to know all the notes in the beginning, but they're going to little by little get so they know what they're doing, but they're going to be able to do what they're doing sooner than they know what they're doing. It's the same way we learned how to speak English, everybody, or French or Spanish or Mandarin or Japanese or whatever your native language is. You learn by ear first, by emulating. And then you went to school, to grammar school, and you learned about nouns and verbs and subjects and predicates and adjectives and adverbs so that you could speak and understand better. But in the beginning, we're learning so they can do it, and then they're learning the theory along the way. Okay, so let's move on to jazz guitar chords. Now, guitar players can't read music that well, usually, but here is the basic symbol, C minor 7. And by the way, we can see C M7 or C dash or C Mi7. And in the last page of this handout, I have all the alternative ways that you see these. But this is how we see it in the Jamie Aebersold play-along books, and that's a very common source that people use. There's C minor, and there's the Dorian scale we just talked about. Notice, there's the scale, 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, And by the way, memorize and tell your students to memorize that the 9 is the same as a 2, and a 4 is the same as an 11, and a 6 is the same as a 13. Or say it this way: 9 is 2, 11 is 4, and 13 is 6. They just have to memorize that. They don't have to think, well, the 13th is an octave higher than the 6th, or the 11th is an octave higher than the 4th. No, they can be interchangeable. You can even put the 9th in the bottom voice if you want. We call each of these a voice. The lowest note is the first, the top note is the top voice, and then second voice, third voice, and fourth voice going down. 4 voices to make a voicing. So, all the notes in this, all these 6 variations, hip ways to play a C minor 7th, all the notes, as you look down here, this is what the notes would look like if played on the piano, all come from this scale. And notice, no avoid tones. So if we see C minor, we can play any of these chords. Now, up here is the specific name, C minor 11th, because it's got an 11th in it. Notice it's got a 4th in it. It's got a 4th. That's why it's called C minor 11th. C minor 9th, 11 9th. And so these are the particular names, the specific names. Over here on the left is the general name. And notice here, this is the fingering. Your guitar players know, and if they don't, you teach them. Your fingers are 1, 2, 3, and 4. Different than piano. The index finger is 1 on guitar. 2 is the middle finger. 3 is the ring finger. 4 is the pinky. So I can play this chord right here, C minor 9, actually a C minor chord, just a hip version, and it would be particularly a C minor 9, just like this. Notice my first finger's here, my third finger. C minor, if I bring it up a fret, C sharp minor. So you have to know where the root is. C sharp minor, lines right up with that third finger. D minor, D sharp minor. I always say to my students, you know, if you want to play E minor to D minor, you can either just move your hand down 2 frets, or you can leave your hand still and just move your guitar over. And that usually gets a little bit of a chuckle, or at least a groan. Here's a C dominant 7th chord. The F is an avoid tone. So there will be, remember we talked about how there's no 4th in major chords and there's no 4th in dominant chords. You will not find an F in any of these chords. You will not find an F in any of these chords. You will in minor, because in minor the 4th sounds great. So the way that this chart works is that you see this black diamond here? The black diamond, don't play it. It tells you where the root is. This is the 1st fret. So if I'm at the 1st fret, that's a C right there. And they know that if they've learned the notes on the guitar, and if not, you remind them that, you know, you have that chart, that's a C. So if they play this chord or this chord and they line it up with that 3rd fret, this is the 1st fret. By the way, this dark line, that's the nut. That's the end of the guitar. Notice when we're up high, like at the 5th fret, we don't have the nut. The nut is this right here. That indicates where the guitar starts. So if I'm at the 5th fret, that would be right here on the 5th fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's how that chart works. So there's that C right there for that C minor voicing. Beautiful voicing. Let's listen to a couple of these. Here's the first one, C minor. 1, I'm playing 3, flat 7, 9. And the bass player will be putting the root in the bass. So together, with that C in the bass, we sound great together. Then C minor, and then here's another C minor. This is the 3rd one. and another C minor. There's the fourth one and another C minor. And finally one more. They all sound great. And so especially when you have C minor lasting for, more than a bar, like you play Blue Bossa, you got C minor for 8 beats and then F minor for 8 beats. They can play just these voicings and mix them up and mix and match and be creative with it. Dominant seventh. Here's the thing to point out. Notice here's the C minor seventh chord right here, C minor seventh chord. Notice it's got the flat 3 right there, that E flat. That's that note right there. If you bring that up a fret to an E natural right here, it's now C seventh. See, the only difference is a flat 3 here and a major third here. But they don't have to be thinking about all that. They just have to think about 2 things. The form of the chord, how to form it, C7. Notice that's C7. I'd lower the third at C minor. But they just have to remember that the fingering for the chord and where the root is. So if I want to play an F seventh, first chord of an F blues, I just line that right up with F. So here's C7, here's F7. D7, they just have to know where the particular chord form, where the root of that chord form lies. So, on this chord chart, there's minor, major, half diminished, dominant 7 altered. Next page, major sharp 11, dominant 7 flat 9, diminished, augmented 7th, dominant 7 sharp 4. And what they see is that there's 60 chords because there's 6 different forms and 10 different qualities. What I mean by quality: minor 7, dominant 7, major 7, half diminished, altered dominant, and so forth. So you can say, can you learn 1 chord a day for the next 60 days? Can you learn this one today and learn this one tomorrow? Again, you can play them in any key. See, this is the right here at the C, you bring it up to a C sharp, you got C sharp minor. You bring it up another fret, you got D minor. Which means that once they learn one chord form a day, and if they can play rock and roll bar chords, which they can learn all these. They're technically not any more difficult. Now, when they play these chords, you want to teach them or tell them that you want to be able to play them 3 separate ways. Remember, they're just 4-note chords. And one way is just with the pick, but just the 4 strings. That's the least best way. The next way is to play them with your thumb and fingers, like this. Notice I'm just having my thumb and fingers. And then the best way is with the pick and the fingers. The pick plays the bottom note, just like this. Bottom note. And the other strings just gently pull. And that way they never have to relinquish the pick. So when they're playing, they can go right to chords, pick and fingers, and that's called comping. So much better than strumming, unless it's like a rock or a funk tune. But for straight ahead jazz, swing, they want a comp. To make life even easier, we're going to go to a thing we call homonyms. Homonyms. Remember when you were in grade school and you learned about antonyms, synonyms, and homonyms? Synonyms were 2 words that meant the same thing, like maybe piano and keyboard. Antonyms were the opposite, good and bad. Homonyms were words that sounded the same but had different meanings. like 2, 2, and 2, like TO, TOO, and TWO. In music, we always talk about here and here. Can you hear what I'm playing here? So in jazz, there will be chords that will be the exact same fingering, but depending on what the bass player plays, will be a whole different chord, and we call those homonyms. Check this out. Guitar chord homonyms. Here's just the major scale. So I wrote down 4 major scales: C major, G flat major, E major, and G major. Now, here is that C7th chord that we just learned. Notice this chord right here, and by the way, look at the fingerings on all these chords. They're all the same. They're all the same. All the fingerings are the exact same. What's different is where the roots are. And how I've indicated the roots is in a white diamond. A white diamond is the root. Notice that's a G flat right there. That's an E right there. And that's a G right there. The white diamond is where the root of that particular chord is. Notice all the notes, look in the staff, are the exact same. But what changes because of what the bass player plays, the quality of each note in relation to that scale. Now, the white circle note, notice the white circle here at the 5th fret of each of these, is the alternative note. And I put that alternative note in the staff in parentheses. So, if we're saying that this is the root, the 5th string, 3rd fret is the root, then we're playing a 3, flat 7, 9, and 5. We're playing a 3, flat 7, 9, and 5 with a C in the bass. So I'm going to put a C in the bass. That's what the bass player plays. And here's that C7 chord. Now if I play that same exact thing, I'm not moving my fingers at all. I'm not moving my fingers at all. I am just going to change the bass note from rather than here to here, pretending the bass player is playing that note, which would be this. Now it's a G flat 7 altered, because you've got in the bass, notice there's the G flat scale right here. Notice you have a flat 7, E natural. B flat would be the 3rd. D would be the sharp 5. See, here's D flat, the regular 5. And G would be the flat 9. See how A flat's the regular 9. Remember, 9 and 2 are the same. And then the alternative note would be A natural, which would be the sharp 9, because the regular 9 is A flat. So even though the bass note changes, the chord doesn't change, the physical chord, but it sounds completely different because of what the bass player is playing. Now, if the root happens to be on the 5th or 6th string, don't play it. If it happens to be on the 4th, 3rd, 2nd, or 1st string, it's okay to play it because it's not too low and it won't be muddy with the bass player. So here's E minor 7 flat 5, which is the same as E half diminished. Notice the same notes. And if an alternative note works for one homonym, it works for all of them. So now you have the voicing root flat 5, flat 7, minor 3rd for half diminished. And you've got the natural 4th on the top, which is a great sound on a half diminished chord. And then on a G minor 6 chord, the voicing happens to be 6, flat 3, 5, root, and 9. Now, to make this easy for your students, that's complicated, but here's how it becomes easy. Look at this right here. Here's what you do with your students. You take your right hand, and you point to the root. Say this is a C7, a G flat 7 altered, an E half diminished, or a G minor sixth. So this one chord has got four names. You just have to remember which root goes with that chord. So this is a C7. Remember, that's on the fifth string. G flat 7 altered, second fret of the sixth string. E half diminished. E is right in the chord, right there. E is right in the chord, and a G minor sixth. Now say, move it up 3 frets. 1, 2, 3. And ask, what are the four names of this chord? Well, E flat 7, A7 altered, G half diminished, and B flat minor 6. Notice they're the same relation. Fifth string lined up right here for the C7th chord. Sixth string on the second, right, lined up with the first finger to make it G flat 7 altered. E, that's in the chord for E half diminished, and then lined up with the third finger on the sixth string is the root of the minor sixth. So C7, G flat 7 altered, E half diminished, G minor 6. Do this at any fret. I just moved it up 2 frets. D7, A flat 7 altered, F sharp half diminished, A minor 6th. So they have learned this one form, and by the way, here's the alternative with the alternative note. With the alternative note, I can add that note right there. It just gives it a little more jazz, if you will. So either one. So that means they've now learned, because they can play them in all key, that's 12 keys, that's 48 chords. And if they do the alternative note, that's another 48. So with just this one voicing, this one fingering, they've now learned 96 chords. 96. Because they know all their dominant sevenths, all their dominant 7 altereds, all their half diminished, which is the same as minor 7 flat 5, and all their minor 6s. One form. Now they can play, just by going like this, they can play a lot of chords just by keeping that the same and moving their arm up. So now I say to the students, okay, you just learned 96. You want to learn another 96? And they say, sure, that was easy. We'll learn another 96 chords right now. Same homonym, but a different form. There's C7. And by the way, when I play this C7 chord, am I playing a G flat 7 altered? Yes. Am I playing an E half diminished? Yes. Am I playing a G minor 6th? Yes. Why? Because they all have the same notes. They are homonyms. So, notice on this voicing, all these look exactly the same. Look at the notes in every measure. They are the same. They're just different degrees of the scales of whatever the bass player plays. So a C7 is a G flat 7 altered. So if you want to play, if your guitar player wants to play a C7 chord and the bass player plays a G flat in the bass, there's no way that guitar player can play a C7. It all depends on what the bass player does. And that's why the bass player is often called the most important person in the group, because the bass player can make your chord sound completely different by putting in a different bass note. And that's why a lot of people like to work with, especially piano players, like to work with particular bass players, because they make the chords that they're playing sound hipper by just putting in a different bass note. So, as long as the guitar player knows where that's supposed to be, where the root is, they can play all 4 chords using that same exact fingering. And I'm going to show you that fingering now. So here was that C7 chord. And I'm playing the flat 7, the 3, the 6, and the root. And the alternative note, that extra note, I could just put a 9 on the top. Like that. Now, here's what you do. They don't have to know the voicing of each chord. They don't have to think about that. All they have to do is know that if I put my fingers like this and I line it up with a C right here, make sure you realize that's a C, that's the 8th fret, that's a C7. So if I line it up with my first finger, it's a C7. If I line it up with my second finger on the 5th string, that's the G flat 7 altered. There's E. E is in the E half diminished chord. And then if I line it up with the 3rd finger on the 5th string, that's the root of the minor 6. So that's G minor 6th. So once again, C7, G flat 7 altered, E half diminished, and G minor 6th. Notice that on this voicing, the root of the C7 chord is on the 5th string, and the root of the G flat 7 altered is on the 6th string, and here they're opposite. The root of the C7 chord is on the 6th string, and the root of the G flat 7th chord, G flat 7 altered chord, is on the 5th string. So again, once they know that, this is a B flat 7 chord. This is a this is a C7 chord. If I move it down 2 frets, it's a B flat 7 chord. But let's see what else it is. It's a B flat 7 chord. It's an E7 altered. It's a D half diminished. And it's an F minor 6th. So now they know, and if they can put in the alternative note here, just by putting in this extra note right there, that's another 96 chords. Another 96 chords. Now, we'll do one more. So I'm playing this one right here, C7. The voicing is flat 7, 9, 3, 6. Why can I put a 9 in it? Because it's in the related scale. Why can I put a 6 in it? Because it's in the related scale. Notice all the notes are the same, and notice the homonyms are still the exact same. C7 is G flat 7 altered, is E minor 7 flat 5, which is E half diminished, is G minor 6th. So they've just learned another 48 chords. They just have to know where the root is. Notice the root is the white diamond in this chart, which you can download. So I'm going to show you that voicing now. Take a look. Here is C7. If the root is here, it's a C7 chord. If my eyes are going here, it's a G flat 7 altered. E is in the chord. E half diminished right there is E is in the chord. And then if I line it up with the 4th string, first finger, that's G, that's the root of the G minor 6th. So again, C7 on the 6th string, G flat 7 altered, G flat on that 5th string, E is in the chord on the 2nd string, and then it lines up with G on the 5th fret of the 4th string, and that makes it a G minor 6th. The next step is to apply this to a tune. Now, let's look at what a 2-5-1 in major and a 2-5-1 in minor is. By the way, here's on this sheet, here are the list of the homonyms. Here's the ones we did today. Dominant 7th, 5-7, like say we're in the key of C, G7 would equal a flat 2-7 altered, that's D flat 7, equals a 7 half diminished, equals a 2 minor 6. That's too hard to explain, but do this, just tell them this, to play any dominant 7 altered chord, play a dominant 7th chord from the flat 5. So C7 altered equals G flat 7. To play any half diminished chord, play a dominant 7th chord from the sharp 5. So C half diminished equals A flat 7. And to play any minor 6th chord, play a dominant 7th chord from the 4th. C minor 6 equals F7. Notice that the fingering will all be the same. They just have to make sure they line it up with the right fret, and this will get them to memorize the neck even faster. Okay, so here's something that you want to make sure that your students know, and that is 2 5-1s in a major key and a minor key. In a major key, 2 chords are minor, 5 chords are dominant, and 1 chords are major. So a 2-5-1 in C major would be D minor 7, G dominant 7, C major 7. In a minor key, the 2 chords are half diminished, same as minor 7 flat 5. 5 chords are dominant 7 altered, meaning no regular 5th, no regular 9th. So a G7 altered is the same as a G7 sharp 5 flat 5 sharp 9 flat 9. Again, they don't have to think about all that. What they have to think about is where to line up those 2 chords they know. Let's say they just know 2, or let's know 1. They can play since half diminished and dominant 7 altered are homonyms. You can just take, if you play a 2-5 in a minor key, you can just take that D half diminished wherever you're playing it up 3 frets, and it becomes G7 altered. And why does that work? Magic. Actually, because it's homonyms. So, check this out. If I'm playing a 2-5-1 like in the tune Blue Bossa, D half diminished to G7 altered, I can take this D half diminished chord right here, which is the same as B flat 7, and move it up 3 frets, and it's automatically G7 altered. D half diminished, G7 altered to C minor. And it sounds like jazz. D half diminished, G7 altered, C minor. Here's a D half diminished. The first one we just learned, remember here was a C7 chord. Remember we learned this one first, C7. We learned that one. And we learned that C7 was the same as E half diminished. So if I move it down a fret, that's B7, so that's the same as E flat half diminished. I move it down another fret. Now just have the nut take care of the D. So that's D half diminished, bring it up 3 frets, G7 altered to C minor. So I now have all these ways to play a 2-5-1 in C minor, which happens, or any key, as long as you're at the right fret. So check it out. Here's D half diminished, G7 altered to C minor. Here's D half diminished all the way up to this G7 altered to C minor. Here's that same D half diminished to this G7 altered to C minor. And all these chords are on the sheet. And by the way, did you notice that I'm only using this one form, and this form, and this form, and this form, 3 forms for the dominant 7 altered chords and for the half diminished chords. So check it out. Here's D half diminished, bring it up 3 frets, G7 altered to C minor. I can mix and match. Here's D half diminished, same as B flat 7. Change it to G7 altered. That's the same as this one moved up 3 frets to C minor, or C minor here. All of these chords are written on that sheet. So what I always suggest my students do is take a tune like Blue Bossa. Please notice that the G7 plus 9 this is from the Jamie Aebersold series. Whenever he writes G7 plus 9, it means G7 altered, meaning not just plus 9, meaning sharp 9, but also flat 9, also flat 5, also sharp 5. So it goes C minor to F minor, D half diminished, G7 altered, C minor. That's a 2-5-1 in C minor. then a 2-5-1 in D flat major, E flat minor, A flat 7, D flat, D half diminished, G7 altered, C minor. Now, I'm going to play those chords for you, and I'm going to use nothing but the voicings that I've shown you to play this whole thing. So just remember C minor, F minor, then a 2-5-1 in C minor, 2-5-1 in D flat major, 2-5-1 in C minor, and of course the turnaround's a 2-5-1 in C minor. Okay, get that in your memory. C minor to F minor, 2-5-1 in C minor, 2-5-1 in D flat major, 2-5-1 in C minor, and the turnaround. Okay, so take a look. C minor, F minor, D half diminished, G7 altered, C minor. Bring it up 3 frets for E flat minor, A flat 7, D flat major, that's on the sheet. Now I'll go back to that same D half diminished, and I go up to one of the other voicings. Again, just these 3 forms for the half diminished and dominant altered to C minor. And maybe my turnaround, I'll do this to this one, to this one, C minor. So you can mix and match. What I have my students do is play Blue Bossa, the first 2-5. For the first chorus, I have them start on this D half diminished and go to all the 3 different G7 altered. So here's D half diminished to G7 altered, D half diminished to G7 altered, D half diminished to G7 altered. Again, just those 3 homonyms. Then on the next chorus, D half diminished to this G7 altered, D half diminished to G7 altered. Notice you can always bring up the same chord 3 frets, half diminished chord up 3 frets. It'll automatically be the right chord. And then D half diminished to this G7 altered. Then we'll do the third chorus with the D half diminished to this G7 altered. That's the first one. D half diminished to the second G7 altered. And then the third one is the parallel, where you just bring it up 3 frets and C minor. For E flat minor, right here, notice this is C minor lined up with C, so E flat minor lined up with E flat. C minor, A flat 7. Notice A flat 7 was the same as B flat 7, which was the same as D half diminished. So E flat minor, A flat 7, D flat. Or you can do it up here. You can go E flat minor, A flat 7, and D flat. You can play with just these forms. They can learn these in a couple of days, sometimes in one lesson. You just sit down with them for half an hour, show them all this stuff that I've talked about, and they're going crazy on all this stuff. Lastly, I'm going to play for you. I want to recommend a couple of books, first of all. One is this one, Easy Jazz Guitar. All these voicings are in there, explained, and you can and I have it on my sheet where you can order it from, and you can get a PDF version and so you don't have to get the book, you just have it sent right to your computer, plus all the audio. And then also this one, Maiden Voyage Guitar Voicings. Both of these books are written by Mike DeLito. He's a former student of mine. And he took this concept and put it in these 2 great books. And he's got comping using these voicings that I'm showing you to play tunes. Notice this is Blue Bossa. And notice these chords, virtually all of them, with a couple of extras, are just the ones we've done today. Notice, like, here's the alternative note there. There's that major 6-9 that's on page 2 of my homonym handout. That's also on page 2 of the homonym handout. So let's listen to a little bit of it and tell me what you think. Recognize these voicings? They're all on the handout. There's that C minor I played all the time. Next chorus. There's one of ours. There's one of ours with the alternative note. There it is again and again. And with the alternative note, that's one of our altered chords. And there's another one. And another one. There's that parallel thing we just did. This is the handout. There's the homonyms. Here it is with the major chords and the minor chords. Notice C major, same as A minor. Same exact fingering. Again, the white diamond on this sheet shows you where the root is. Don't play it if it's on the 5th or the 6th string. And then the white circle is the alternative note you can put in. Alternative note you can put in. On this first set of handouts, it's all on the same sheet, the black diamond is where the root is. The black diamond is where the root is. By the way, here's the list of homonyms on there. Notice any diminished chord equals 4 diminished chords. Any diminished chord equals 4 dominant 7 flat 9 chords. And all this is going to be, once you do the first part, this will all be very self-explanatory to your students. Once they know how to play a diminished chord, they can play any dominant 7 flat 9 chord as long as they know where the root is. And all that's on those first two sheets, where all those roots are in the black diamond. Now, here's the order of tunes that I suggest you teach your students. Most of them come from Maiden Voyage, volume 54 of Aebersold. Watermelon Man. And the reason why I have them listed here, because they're, first of all, really good jazz tunes, real jazz tunes by Herbie Hancock and Horace Silver and Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Duke Ellington, and the list goes on and on. Sonny Rollins, Wayne Shorter, they're all real tunes, but every subsequent tune uses something from the previous tune. So they don't have to learn that much. Like Watermelon Man only has 3 chords, F7, B flat 7, and C7, and they can learn their dominant 7 voicings and just play them all over, for those 3 chords, lining them up with the root, right? Knowing where the root is, lining the fingering up with that root to get the 3 chords, even if they play the same exact voicing, and then they learn another voicing and they can go to the closest one and get good voice leading. The next tune to learn is Song for My Father. That only has 4 chords. Well, the first chord is F minor. Well, they already know F7th from Watermelon Man, so all they have to do is lower the 3rd to F minor. And then E flat 7 is the next chord. Well, that's the same as F7 from Watermelon Man, but 2 frets lower, because E flat is 2 half steps lower than F, and then D flat 7, another 2 frets lower, and then the only other chord is G minor. Well, if they know how to play F minor, bring it up 2 frets, and they got G minor. That's how this works. Cantaloupe Island just has 3 chords. F minor, which they already know from Song for My Father. D flat 7, which they already know from Song for My Father. And so they only have to learn D minor. Now they've got 3 tunes memorized. So What has just 2 chords, D minor, which they know from Cantaloupe Island, and E flat minor. They just have to bring it up 1 fret, D minor to E flat minor. Impressions has the same exact 2 chords, so now they're learning what a contrafact is. A contrafact is a tune based on the chord progression of a tune already in existence. Maiden Voyage only has 4 chords. Afternoon in Paris has 2 5-1s. Satin Doll's got 2 5s in 5 keys, all in the same tune. Blue Bossa, which we just did, 2 5-1s in both major and minor. Summertime, 2 5-1s in major and minor. Autumn Leaves, 2 5s, 1 in major and minor. So every subsequent tune uses something from the previous tune. Here are the play-along recordings. You can get them for 99 cents each at jazzbooks.com to practice playing along with them. I have F blues and B flat blues in here and a minor blues. These are all staples. And also rhythm changes, how we finish it. These are all must-know tunes. You do 1 tune a week for 25 weeks. And by the way, it doesn't take that much to do the subsequent tune because you most know everything you need to know from the previous tune. You go in that order, 25 weeks, you won't believe what a better jazz guitar player you'll have in your band. You won't believe how much better they'll be just after the first day, just after learning a couple of these new voicings rather than those rock and roll bar chords. So, if you have any questions on any of this, feel free to email me anytime, and I answer all emails. My email address is jbdias@hancockinstitute.org. That's jbdias@hancockinstitute.org. And I'll be able to answer your questions or do a Zoom call with you or a phone call or whatever. And don't forget to download the handout that goes with this. It's everything that you've seen today is in that packet. That's it. Thank you, everybody.